Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 156 based on novel. So let's start. It's night. In a different garden in Yangcheng, a gorgeous woman with a delicate body wrapped in a red skirt is standing by the pond in the courtyard. Two lotus root-like white jade arms are around her chest. Her delicate body stands upright and reveals all her attractive figure. Compared with ordinary times, this woman at the moment can be called a real beauty. With this scene, it's really amazing, so I couldn't help thinking in my heart. At this moment, a woman's beautiful eyes are staring at the pond in front of her, her charming red lips are slightly pouted, and a little complaining look appears on her pretty face. Then, over the courtyard, in the middle of the night, a dark figure fell into the courtyard from far to near. This person is Xiao Yang, and the gorgeous woman standing by the pond in the courtyard is Jin Yao. Cough. Lower down, Xiao Yang could not help but look up slightly red under his black robe. Looking at Jin Yao in front of him, he couldn't help showing an embarrassed look on his old face, so he had to cough twice to signal his arrival. I'm having a good chat. Why come back? Knowing that Xiao Yang was not far behind, Jin Yao still pretended to find out. He was silent for a long time. Hearing this, Xiao Yang was even more embarrassed on his old face. He smiled, lowered his head, stared at a beautiful flower blooming in the moonlight on the ground, paused and said, "What happened today? I'm really sorry, because their relationship makes you worry. It's my fault. I forgot you later. It's also my fault." Xiao Yang didn't mean to find a reason to explain. Today, he really forgot Jin Yao. It was his fault and there was no need to find any reason. This is the second time today. After a long time, Jin Yao, who didn't hear Xiao Yang's explanation, turned slowly and opened her red lips. What you can see is that compared with before, the complaining color on Jin Yao's pretty face has obviously decreased a lot. Perhaps it is because of the latter's sincerity that Jin Yao forgives in her heart. Hearing Jin Yao's words, Xiao Yang couldn't help picking his eyebrows slightly and felt a little confused in his heart. The reason why Jin Yao said the second time was that Xiao Yang disappeared in front of her without her consent. The first time, when she was in the small courtyard, she thought Xiao Yang left without saying goodbye. The second time, it was Dong Chuan who didn't see Xiao Yang's agreement. Jin Yao mistakenly thought that Xiao Yang had an accident. If Xiao Yang didn't show up tonight, I'm afraid it would be Dong Chuan's good words. Jin Yao will also try her best to fight with them. For a long time, Xiao Yang seemed to have a clear understanding. He bowed his head and remained silent. He didn't know what to say in his heart. Sorry, next time. I don't want another time. Xiao Yang's words haven't been spit out yet, but Jin Yao raises her beautiful eyes. Her long and narrow eyes stare at Xiao Yang and say categorically. Xiao Yang was stunned at first, and his face was at a loss. Then he nodded heavily to Jin Yao and said solemnly, "Sure." Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Jin Yao pursed a smile, as if she didn't care about the previous things, and the fact is true. Jin Yao believes in Xiao Yang. This is from the moment Xiao Yang defeated Lu Cheng, and there will never be any doubt. Since Xiao Yang said this at the moment, Jin Yao naturally believes that Xiao Yang will never leave her without saying goodbye next time or in the future. Does the fire plume flower have eyebrows? Relaxed, Jin Yao breathed out a breath slightly, quickly flashed a smile on her pretty face, frowned slightly, looked at Xiao Yang and asked. Hearing this, Xiao Yang first smiled and nodded, then frowned and shook her head indefinitely, which made Jin Yao confused. Did you say that she didn't find Huolinghua on this trip? If you can't find a single flame plume flower in every line of Qianyunpai's collection, I'm afraid you can't find a second one in the whole western region. No. Jin Yao asked slowly. Her pretty face looked very careful. She knew that the fire plume flower was very important to Xiao Yang. Referring to this matter, her cheek quickly recovered its normal color. There are no fire plumes in Tianyun auction house. Xiao Yang said in a slightly confused tone. At the same time, Jin Yao, who came forward slowly, couldn't help frowning slightly. In this way, the fire plume flower is really hopeless to find. But fortunately, manager Fang Qian seems to happen to have some news about that. He will help me find it in recent days. I think he should have some news soon. Just when Jin Yao was helpless to frown, Xiao Yang suddenly appeared a smile on his lost face, and his eyes also looked a little more sad. As soon as he said this, a smile suddenly appeared on Jin Yao's pretty face. Doesn't that mean that Xiao Yang will stay in Yangcheng for a while in order to wait for the news of Huolinghua recently? Thinking of this, Jin Yao suddenly had a happy appearance in her heart, and a light crimson color rose on her white pretty face for some reason, but Xiao Yang didn't notice it because of the coverage of the moonlight. "What are you going to do next?" Jin Yarrow blinked a pair of exquisite big eyes and asked with a funny smile. Xiao Yang turned her eyes and looked at Jin Yarrow in front of her, saying with a smile, "I don't know what to do. There's no place to go, so I don't know if it's convenient for the owner of the gold workshop to stay for a while. Oh, as it happens, I have many vacant rooms here. You can choose." They were like singing a double reed. They knew it well, but they said it respectfully. After a short moment, the laughter of the two people came out of the courtyard and gradually flew under the brilliance of the silver moon. In the next few days, after avoiding the trouble of looking for the fire plume flower alone, Xiao Yang always lived in Jinyao's private garden, clean and undisturbed. Xiao Yang was also happy. In his spare time, in addition to carefully controlling his strong soul power, he put his mind on the image decision. Although he has been able to exert the power of power image resolution in general, from several combat experiences, Xiao Yang is not familiar with power image resolution. Even, I'm afraid there is still a long way to really control it. After all, at present, although he has successfully cultivated power image resolution, Xiao Yang's control of his own power, but it is not as handy as described in the scroll, not to mention the powerful power like 4 or 2,000 gold. In the small courtyard, a huge stone moved by Xiao Yang from nowhere is calmly placed in front of Xiao Yang at the moment. The boulder is heavy and huge, like a hill. From a distance, even outside the courtyard and far away, you can vaguely see the huge shape of the boulder. At this time, Xiao Yang was standing steadily in front of the boulder. At Xiao Yang's feet, there was a mud pit that was not very muddy. Xiao Yang stood in the mud pit without the help of any external force, his feet were stable, and the whole body obviously sank slightly until the mud pit reluctantly withstood the weight of Xiao Yang's body. Xiao Yang's arms drooped naturally, his eyes closed slightly, and his breathing between his nose was stable and orderly. The whole person tried his best to adjust his state and keep a delicate balance with the mud pit under his feet. This balance is extremely fragile. Once there is any change, it may make Xiao Yang's legs sink into the mud quickly. At this time, Xiao Yang is trying to control his focus for this balance. Standing in the mud pit where he might sink himself at any time, Xiao Yang's face didn't show any relaxed look. Although he is a semi-imperial strongman, without using any fighting spirit, he can only be regarded as being stronger than ordinary people. Standing in this mud pit, he also has no countermeasures. However, because of this, Xiao Yang plans to use this mud pit to improve his control over his physical strength. Xiao Yang always has high requirements for himself, and this time is no exception. In order to enhance his control over the strength of the flesh, Xiao Yang should show his strength and resolve to smash the huge stone in front of him while standing steadily on the mud pit. It is not difficult for Xiao Yang to smash the boulder, but the key is that while smashing the boulder, Xiao Yang's body must still stand steadily on the mud pit, which is a great challenge for Xiao Yang who does not use any fighting spirit. He breathed carefully. In order to keep his body stable, Xiao Yang had to be careful in his every behavior. Even when he breathed, he had to be very careful. Under the sleeve robe, the white palm slowly closed, and Xiao Yang's every move seemed very delicate. The arm was raised gradually, and the strength gathered quietly in the palm of his hand. It became stronger bit by bit. Virtually, the focus of Xiao Yang's whole body also changed. Xiao Yang's body began to tilt to one side. Although the arc was not large, Xiao Yang clearly noticed it. Xiao Yang's heart coagulated slightly, and then he calmed down quickly. In fact, this situation is not the first time in these days. Dozens of failures have made Xiao Yang understand some experience. At the moment, this situation seems to be a harbinger before Xiao Yang is about to fall into the mud. However, Xiao Yang is gradually familiar with it. He also has an updated countermeasure in his heart. He thinks it may work. Of course, this is the first time Xiao Yang has comforted himself like this. The other palm slowly clenched his fist. Xiao Yang's slightly tilted body was indeed stable. Only the whole body standing in the mud pit was obviously slightly concave downward. Xiao Yang took a deep breath, as if doing so could reduce the pressure he brought to the mud pit. I don't know whether Xiao Yang's method is useful or because of some other reasons. Xiao Yang's sinking body no longer moves. His heart suddenly rejoices. The two palms under his sleeve robe slowly lift up from the left, slowly and heavy, as if he was carrying some heavy burden. Fortunately, Xiao Yang has not failed this time until Xiao Yang lifted his hands to his chest, both palms clenched their strength, and Xiao Yang's body shape was still stable, which could not help but make Xiao Yang's heart beat faster. Looking at this, it seemed that he was not far from the final step of success. As long as he could successfully blow out a punch and smash the boulder in front of him, his body shape could still stand on the mud pit, which was a success. Of course, at the same time, Xiao Yang's heart also knows that the last punch is the most difficult, but at present, the arrow is on the line and has to be sent, not to mention seeing that there is only one step away from the last step. How can Xiao Yang relax easily? There was a breath in his chest. Xiao Yang's whole body was tight. The air was still sucked into his body from Xiao Yang's nose. He was nervous and excited, which made Xiao Yang inhale more madly. For the last blow, he dared not relax, making his whole chest look particularly prominent. Finally, Xiao Yang's clenched fist trembled slightly, but his whole body stood steadily. His feet sank slightly downward in the mud pit, but they never fell completely. Until a certain moment, Xiao Yang's heart was horizontal, and his two fists wanted to blast forward. And it also coincides with this time. Xiao Yang, my sister is back. Didn't you run? Cluck, cluck. The charming laughter full of temptation suddenly sounded in the small courtyard. Xiao Yang's body that wanted to move suddenly sank down, and his two legs sank into the mud pit again. Xiao Yang's eyes closed hard, his eyebrows twisted up in an instant, and the breath held in his chest was also exhaled in an instant. The whole person was like a deflated ball and softened in an instant. Xiao Yang did not expect that Jin Yaro, who had not appeared again for several days, would not come early or late. Seeing that he was about to succeed, he suddenly came like a natural disaster. Cluck, cluck. Last time, because of Lu Cheng, there were many things in Chenyaro workshop that couldn't be solved in time. It bothered me for a lot of time. Until today, it was finally solved. With a relaxed smile, Jin Yaro came to Xiao Yang. Seeing the strange appearance of the latter, a look of curiosity appeared on her pretty face. Are you? Jin Yaro asked suspiciously with a pretty face, and her tone was mixed with a little strange taste. Xiao Yang is in the heart a burst of crazy lips, but finally had to turn into a helpless sigh, shrugged his shoulders, didn't say much, and walked out of the mud pit. Jin Yaro was also suspicious and said she didn't know what had happened. Soon, a smile appeared on her pretty face and wanted to tell Xiao Yang what had happened in the 1000 medicine workshop. However, at this time, there was another old figure outside the courtyard, and then came to Xiao Yang. The visitor is Fang Qian, the steward of Tianyun auction house. Mr. Xiao Yang, fortunately, I have found the fire plume flower. The sudden arrival of Fang Qian also stunned Xiao Yang, but then, when Xiao Yang heard the words from the latter's mouth, the expression on his face was instantly solidified. After a flash, what emerges immediately is infinite surprise and excitement. Xiao Yang thought he might stay here for 10 days and a half months, but what he didn't expect was that Huolinghua had already disappeared in just a few days, which could really be called a surprise. Fang Qian fell in the middle of the courtyard. First, he smiled and arched his hand at Jin Yaro, who looked gloomy when he saw him. Then he came to Xiao Yang, arched his hand, hugged his fist and said with a smile, "Hehe, sir, I have sent someone to help you find out the whereabouts of the fire plume flower you are looking for." Although he had heard it clearly just now, after listening to Fang Qian's confirmation again, Xiao Yang's heart became more excited and excited at the moment. Labor is in charge. Facing Fang Qian in front of him, Xiao Yang hugged him with a happy face. "Hehe, you're welcome, sir. It's just a little effort. There's no need to thank you. Besides, if you can really help, sir, it's also our blessing." "Sir, there's no need to thank you." Fang Qian respectfully arched his hand at Xiao Yang and smiled. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang smiled, but didn't notice Jin Yaro. At the moment, a pretty face is gloomy. I thought I had solved the affairs in the 1000 medicine workshop and should be able to relax and accompany Xiao Yang for a few days. But from now on, Xiao Yang has just finished the affairs in the 1000 medicine workshop, but Xiao Yang is about to leave in a twinkling of an eye. In addition to feeling sorry, Jin Yaro is also happy for Xiao Yang. From the dialogue a few days ago, Jin Yaro knows that Xiao Yang attaches great importance to Huolinghua. Now there is news, his heart is naturally pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, Xiao Yang's departure leaves Jin Yaro with sadness and loss. Alas! He sighed helplessly in his heart. Jin Yaro stood aside and said nothing, while Xiao Yang looked at the latter after laughing and chatting with Fang Qian. "Hehe, Sister Jin Yaro, thank you for taking me in these days. With the whereabouts of Huolinghua, it's time for me to leave." Seeing the lost color on Jin Yaro's pretty face, Xiao Yang couldn't help blinking slightly in his eyes, but he sighed helplessly in his heart after all. "Are you leaving soon?" Jin Yaro raised her beautiful eyes and looked at Xiao Yang in front of her with a slightly lonely tone. Fang Qian on one side could not help but frown slightly when he saw this. Naturally, he could see that the relationship between Xiao Yang and Jin Yarrow was extraordinary. Although they had only seen each other twice and had not known each other for a long time, Xiao Yang's various actions made Jin Yarrow, the two-star fighting emperor, admire in his heart. In particular, Xiao Yang acted for him and regretted the strong fighting emperor with the strength of a half-emperor. It is the best way to capture a woman's heart. Although it seems a little old-fashioned, it is undoubtedly the most effective way. This is also confirmed by Jin Yarrow. I will go to the auction house first to understand the specific situation of Huolinghua. I should leave today. After a pause, Xiao Yang said slowly. Hehe, sir, why don't you talk to the owner of Jinfang first? There are still some matters in the auction house that haven't been solved. I'll go back first. Fang Qian's old eyes twinkled slightly. His eyes glanced back and forth at the two people in front of him. After a moment, he smiled and said that he wanted to turn around and leave. Wait. Jin Yarrow, who is facing Xiao Yang, suddenly turns around and quickly calls Fang Qian to stop. At the same time, Xiao Yang also turns around slowly, with a touch of embarrassment on his face. At the same time, there is also a sense of helplessness. Is there anything else for Master Jin Fang? Fang Qian slightly raised his eyebrows, looked at Jin Yarrow with a pair of old eyes, and swept Xiao Yang beside him. His voice asked in doubt. Xiao Yang, you'd better go with him. I remember that there are still some things in the 1000 Medicine Workshop that haven't been solved. I'm afraid I can't accompany you anymore. Jin Yarrow turned her head, looked at Xiao Yang and smiled reluctantly. All the affairs in the 1000 Medicine Workshop have been completed, so Jin Yarrow will return to the small courtyard. Xiao Yang knows this. The reason why Jin Yarrow said this is just to find an excuse. She doesn't know what to say to Xiao Yang after Fang Qian left. In order to avoid the embarrassment between the two, Jin Yarrow chooses to leave, which can reduce Xiao Yang's apology slightly. At the same time, it can also make Xiao Yang focus more on stopping his own things. After all, the fire plume flower is too important for Xiao Yang. Before Xiao Yang could speak, Jin Yarrow was already pacing the sky. With a far-fetched smile on her pretty face, her delicate body moved, she quickly flashed away and left here. In the twinkling of an eye, there were only Xiao Yang and Fang Qian left in the small courtyard. Alas! She sighed helplessly and thought that she had clearly said to Jin Yarrow that she would tell her in advance when she left, but unexpectedly, all this came so suddenly. The sun above her head is in the morning. When she goes to Tianyun auction house this time, it must be only a long time before Xiao Yang can leave Yangcheng. But can it be regarded as leaving without saying goodbye? Although Jin Yarrow knows the news in front of her, Xiao Yang still has a feeling that she doesn't want to go. Mr. Xiao Yang, let's go. Fang Qian saw the worry and hesitation in Xiao Yang's heart, and for the sake of great events, Fang Qian had to wake Xiao Yang up from this state. Xiao Yang, who came back to his senses, looked slightly, and looked involuntarily at the direction of Jin Yarrow's departure, because he remembered that Xiao Yang and Jin Yarrow's departure direction were not the location of the 1000 Medicine Workshop. Mr. Xiao Yang. Let's go. Fang Qian seemed to be in a hurry, but his voice was still flat, but it sounded like a slight tremor like a piano string, which showed that the latter's heart was not calm. Xiao Yang broke Fang Qian's words and moved. Those familiar with the road led the way, while Fang Qian followed. When he and Dong Chuan knew Xiao Yang's identity, they didn't dare to look at the latter as the above, not to mention that the latter itself was not vulgar. At this time, when they faced Xiao Yang, it was as if Xiao Yang was one head higher than them, but Xiao Yang didn't mean it. Sweeping up the void, Xiao Yang flew forward. At the same time, he felt the eyes cast in the Xiafang city. Almost everyone's eyes were filled with awe. Mr. Xiao Yang has extraordinary strength. After the last fight with Lu Cheng, no one dares to be disrespectful to him in this burning city. Fang Qian smiled and said something flattering. Smelling the speech, Xiao Yang smiled non-committally. He still clearly remembered that when these people first looked at him, they were full of disdain and pity. This was not Xiao Yang's revenge, but he saw too much. Xiao Yang no longer believed it. This kind of person is like a fox. One moment may still be smiling at you, but who knows if it will bite you back the next moment. The so-called wall grass, these guys are much more sinister. After the short event of cheating Krypton, Xiao Yang and Fang Qian came to Tianyun auction house again. It was still the small courtyard. Xiao Yang saw a figure standing in it from a distance. Needless to say, it was Dong Chuan. When Xiao Yang and Dong Chuan fell into the courtyard, Dong Chuan turned around and looked at Fang Qian quickly. Then he looked at Xiao Yang and laughed. Haha, Mr. Xiao Yang, I haven't seen you for a few days. Sir looks much better than a few days ago. Xiao Yang smiled. He really couldn't stand Dong Chuan, who was flattered all the time. I just want to know something about Huolinghua this time. President Dong said it bluntly. Following Dong Chuan's footsteps, Xiao Yang sat beside the stone table already prepared and said slowly. Seeing Xiao Yang's outspoken theme, Dong Chuan and others couldn't help looking at each other. The prepared words fell apart in an instant under this sentence. Well, I know Mr. Xiao Yang has been waiting for a long time, so I won't say any more nonsense. We have confirmed the news of Fire Plume Flower. Just 2 months ago, a Fire Plume Flower was born, but it has been picked. Now, the owner of the Fire Plume Flower wants to auction the Fire Plume Flower by auction, and now it's far from auction. There is less than a month left for the sale. First, he was slightly stunned. Then, Dong Chuan simply stopped beating around the bush and said frankly, auction? 1 month? Does President Dong know where the auction is held? Strong self repressed the excitement in his heart. Xiao Yang picked out the key points in Dong Chuan's words. Yes, it is understood that the venue of this auction is a city called Shenzhen. Unfortunately, Shenzhen is located within the sphere of influence of Tianjianmen. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Dong Chuan couldn't help but look surprised, but then he continued to speak, but the next words made Xiao Yang frown. Unexpectedly, the auction place of the Fire Plume Flower is actually within the sphere of influence of Tianjian Gate. In this way, I'm afraid I'll probably meet the people of Tianjian Gate. After the events of ancient ruins, Tianjian's sect must hate him. With Xiao Yang's last record, he destroyed the Fire Lotus, but the loss to Tianjian's sect is not small. There are 2 3-star fighting emperors, including the descendants of the Hua family. Once Xiao Yang's identity is exposed, I'm afraid it will lead to the siege of Tianjian's sect. Do you know the specific location of Shenzhen? The whole eyebrow was tightly screwed together like a mess. Xiao Yang's face was heavy. Last time, he had a chance to leave there alive because he had cold frost in time. This time, without cold frost and Bonyu, Xiao Yang was the only person he could rely on. Location of Shenzhen. As soon as he spoke, Dong Chuan stopped. He also knew that the Fire Plume Flower was very important to Xiao Yang, but at the same time, he also knew that once Xiao Yang was informed of the specific location of Shenzhen, what he had to face next was likely to be a danger of life and death. It seems that he guessed the concerns in Dong Chuan's heart. Xiao Yang couldn't help frowning slightly. It's like a pair of men and women taking off their clothes. They just took off half, but the woman can't say it. It makes people feel anxious and uncomfortable. But then Xiao Yang smiled cunningly, looked at the latter with a grin, and said with a smile. It's already said. You can't stop here. Besides, since it's a city within the influence of Tianjianmen, there must be a lot of people who know. Even if you don't tell me, I'll go out and inquire about it, won't I know? Hearing the speech, Dong Chuan suddenly smiled helplessly. He glanced at Fang Qian and found that the latter was also looking at him with a bitter smile. Immediately, they both sighed together. Immediately, Dong Chuan looked up at Xiao Yang and said helplessly, Shenzhen is located at the junction of the Hua family and the Bai family. It belongs to a city jointly managed by the 2 families. Because there are fire plumes at the auction, it has also attracted the attention of many strong people of the 2 families, so, hehe, thank President Dong for telling me. Dong Chuan's voice didn't fall, but Xiao Yang smiled and hugged Dong Chuan. The smile on his face looked quite relaxed. Isn't Mr. Xiao Yang worried about the people of the 2 families? Dong Chuan frowned. There was a little warm anger in his words. Unexpectedly, he said this. Xiao Yang not only didn't show a trace of worry, but also looked light and indifferent. Is it difficult that he didn't worry about the people of the Hua family and the Bai family at all? Hearing Dong Chuan's words with a slight warning, Xiao Yang smiled and shook his head. Seeing this, Dong Chuan was in a hurry and hurried to say, Mr. Xiao Yang, those 2 families will send strong fighters to the scene. Once. Hee, President Dong, why worry? It's not that time yet. Why worry? Fear before war is the beginning of failure. I don't think I will be left by them. Since I dare to go, I naturally have my own means to protect my life. Dong Hui doesn't have to worry about this, let alone. Xiao Yang said softly and smiled. At the end of his words, he suddenly stopped. At the same time, in the depths of Xiao Yang's eyes, a touch of essence also flashed. Seeing this, Dong Chuan sighed helplessly. He had to hope that Xiao Yang really had his own means to protect his life. Otherwise, the trip to Shenzhen would be in trouble. They didn't want Xiao Yang, who Luo Jin ordered them to help, to finally surrender his life because of them. This is not what Luo Jin wants to see. Similarly, they don't want to see. If there's no big deal, I'll go back first. After that, Xiao Yang turned around and wanted to leave. Mr. Xiao Yang, where are you going back? Xiao Yang just turned around, but Fang Qian and Dong Chuan behind him were stunned and looked at each other. Immediately, Fang Qian asked curiously, "Oh, it's a 1,000 medicine workshop." Xiao Yang smiled lightly, but the two people behind him frowned even more. Mr. Xiao Yang, Shencheng is quite far from Yangcheng. Now there is less than a month left. If you continue to consume like this, I'm afraid. Don't worry, I'm sure. Xiao Yang turned her back to the two people, smiled and made a sound. At the same time, she waved her back to the two people, and then moved forward. Her footsteps paced up the void, and then flew away in the opposite direction of the 1,000 medicine workshop. 1,000 medicine workshop. A few days ago, because of Lu Cheng, a whole floor of the 1,000 medicine workshop was damaged, and at the same time, the whole 1,000 medicine workshop was more or less affected. However, under the command of Jin Yaro, in less than a week, the 1,000 medicine workshop has returned to its original style again. From the outside, the whole 1,000 medicine workshop has taken on a new look and looks more dignified than before. Even the flow of people in the 1,000 medicine workshop is much larger. Of course, in this process, some people inevitably come for Xiao Yang, and the reason is naturally the battle with Lu Cheng. Unfortunately, although these people come to the 1,000 medicine workshop with an expectation, they have never seen Xiao Yang after all. On the contrary, they have brought a lot of business to the 1,000 medicine workshop under the crazy recommendation of various managers in the workshop. At this moment, in an independent room in the 1,000 medicine workshop, a gorgeous woman wrapped under a red skirt is lying on a wooden table near the window with a sullen face. A pair of long and narrow eyes look at the pedestrians on the street outside the workshop from top to bottom. Her eyes are listless and she seems to be thinking about something. Alas! It's clearly agreed to inform me in advance before leaving. I didn't expect to leave today. I'm really a man and a liar. The woman murmured in a low voice. The woman, impressively, left Xiao Yang and Fang Qian, and finally returned to Jinyao in the 1,000 medicine workshop alone. The long and narrow beautiful eyes lifted slightly, and Jinyao stared at the direction out of the city. It seemed that she was waiting for something to appear. At the same time, the complaining look in her eyes was even worse. That guy. Who knows if he will leave the city from other directions? I actually want to see him from here. I really want to see him more. Let's go. It's best not to come in the future. I'll be worried when I come. I'm heartless when I leave. Who said I was leaving? Since I promised you, I naturally did what I said. Just as Jin Yaro's face was depressed, suddenly, a familiar smile came out of the window. Then, from the top of the window, a figure dressed in black robes slowly fell down, stepped on the void and fell on the side of the window, the height of which was the same as that of Jin Yao. Seeing the sudden appearance of the figure, Jin Yao's pretty face was stunned, and then she came back to her mind. Meimo hurriedly looked at it, and then she saw Xiao Yang in a black robe. You. Don't worry. If you don't agree, I will never leave easily. Xiao Yang smiled. The smile looked quite warm and intoxicating. Haven't you gone? After returning to her senses, Jin Yao still couldn't believe it. It was clear that Xiao Yang, who was ready to leave, how could he appear here again? Logically, Xiao Yang should have left at the moment. Come and see me before you leave. Don't think I can forgive you. Don't leave without saying goodbye. Don't want me to forgive. Without waiting for Xiao Yang to speak, Jin Yao made a lot of remarks. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang was speechless for a moment, and she felt unable to cry or laugh in her heart. In order not to let you forgive, so. Xiao Yang smiled. When the words were about to spit out, he suddenly had a meal. Jin Yao by the window also stood up immediately. A pair of beautiful eyes stared at Xiao Yang. The eyes stared round, and a cold hum came out from his nose. Her delicate body twisted and was ready to leave. So I'm not going to go today. The next moment, when Xiao Yang uttered words in his mouth, Jin Yao, who had just come to the door, was instantly fixed in place. A smile appeared on Xiao Yang's face. At the same time, Jin Yao, who was facing Xiao Yang with her back, also had a beautiful smile on her pretty face at the moment. What about the fire plume flower? No. Jin Yao turned around. Her graceful posture was fascinating, but Xiao Yang had no other thoughts. It's too late to start tomorrow. Xiao Yang smiled, The clouds were light and the wind was light. I'm curious. How did they find the fire plume flower? Even I haven't heard any news about the fire plume flower recently. Jin Yaro smiled, but turned her attention to Hualing flower. Xiao Yang smiled and remained silent. He didn't intend to tell Jin Yaro that Hualinghua was far away in Shenzhen. Doing so would only make her worry. Giggle, even if you don't say it, I don't bother to ask. Seeing Xiao Yang's appearance, Jin Yaro doesn't seem to care about it on the surface, but she can't help worrying. If the location of fire plume flower doesn't matter, Xiao Yang can tell her, but it doesn't. Then it shows that the location of fire plume flower is probably not a place to live in peace. By the way, what were you doing in my yard before? I seem to have disturbed you. I'm sorry. As soon as the topic changed, Jin Yaro mentioned what she had done in the courtyard before. Thinking of Xiao Yang's embarrassed appearance in the mud pit, Jin Yaro couldn't help laughing like a silver bell. Ha ha, it's you, it hurt me all in a mess. Xiao Yang came to the window and drank a cup of tea on the table. Hey, that's what I drink. Jin Yaro exclaimed softly, and a blush appeared on her pretty face. Although she almost forgot the cup of tea, this cup was her habitual one. Ha ha. Xiao Yang laughed and laughed. Jin Yaro covered her mouth and spat. In the twinkling of an eye, it was night. The silver moon is high, the stars are bright, the night sky is like a far-reaching and vast sea, and the terrain is the same as the boundless snow. In the 1000 Medicine Workshop and the pavilion top, two figures sat here at will and looked at them from a distance. Silver moon seemed to be behind them, like their background and foil. Jin Yaro played with the ornaments on her wrist at will, and her beautiful eyes turned to Xiao Yang from time to time. The latter was lying on his back on the roof, gently chewing a piece of tender grass in his mouth. Xiao Yang, who are you? Suddenly, the peace between them was broken by the curious words spitting out by Jin Yaro. Xiao Yang was a little stunned, because he chewed gently, and the tender grass swaying slightly in the air, so he stopped. With a slight pick in his eyebrow, Xiao Yang looked at his Jin Yaro. His eyes turned and shot straight into the distant night sky. The bright sea of stars reflected in his eyes and reflected a little starlight. Why do you suddenly ask? After a moment of silence, Xiao Yang asked back. Because I think you are different from others. You are different from everyone I see. You don't look like people in the same world with them or me. Because you've never seen anyone who can challenge a strong emperor with the strength of a half-emperor? Jin Yaro uttered words, and Xiao Yang then asked softly. Maybe. In fact, I don't know. It's just a faint intuition. Jin Yaro was silent, shrugged his shoulders like Xiao Yang, and then said faintly. Women's intuition is really terrible. The muscles in the corners of Xiao Yang's eyes trembled slightly, and he couldn't help whispering in his heart. Jin Yaro was right. They didn't belong to the same continent. Are you from the central region? Or is your family in the central region? Suddenly, Jin Yaro seemed unwilling to question Xiao Yang. She could have such a powerful cultivation talent and such terrible combat power. In her imagination, in the imagination of all people in the western regions, I'm afraid only people in the middle of the mainland have this ability. However, in Jin Yaro's gaze, Xiao Yang smiled and shook his head. This answer could not help but make Jin Yaro look surprised. So, do you have a family? Or someone you've always liked? After hesitating for a long time, Jin Yaro still couldn't help asking. However, the voice was gradually low and at the end of the speech, even people couldn't hear it clearly. They are still far away. Therefore, the appearance of Zuna and colorful scales emerged in my mind, followed by Xiao Xiao and several other children. They. Do you have children? Jin Yaro's pretty face flashed a lost color, but she couldn't help asking. Hey, Xiao Xiao girl, it's time to be an adult now. It's just a pity that I can't see her here. Xiao Yang sighed and smiled, and his face showed a lonely color. Jin Yaro on one side was silent because of this. The silent night flows like this in solitude and memory. In the twinkling of an eye, the dawn of the earth came to the world again, the night faded, and everything woke up quickly like early spring. In the burning city, the 1000 Medicine Workshop, on the top of the pavilion, sat Xiao Yang in the middle of the night, slowly opened his eyes and welcomed the light of the new day. The Jin Yaro on the side has no idea where to go. The city below again becomes prosperous, gongs and drums are noisy. Standing up, Xiao Yang looked into the distance. At the end of his sight, there was a vast mountain forest. Looking around the city, Xiao Yang didn't notice Jin Yaro's figure. His eyes flickered slightly. Xiao Yang sighed and identified the direction again. Then he didn't hesitate anymore. When he moved, he quickly flew away in the direction of Xiancheng. In the twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang's figure has been far away from the Yang city. Until this time, the top of the 1,000 Medicine Square pavilion and the body shape of Jin Yarrow slowly emerged. A pair of beautiful eyes looked at the direction Xiao Yang left, and a pretty face could not help showing a lost look, which was also mixed with some worries. On the other side, over the sky of Tianyun auction house, two old figures emerged slowly. They also stared at the direction of Xiao Yang's departure. After a long time, they looked at where Jin Yarrow was. At the same time, Jin Yarrow also turned her eyes and looked at the two old people from a distance. Time is like finger sand. In the twinkling of an eye, another half a month passed. Xiao Yang traveled day and night, wearing stars and the moon. Finally, looking at the horizon at the end of his line of sight, the outline of a huge city, like a piece of painted black rock, appeared in Xiao Yang's eyes. Looking at this huge city from a distance, Xiao Yang's heart can't help being filled with hot emotions. After half a month, Xiancheng is finally close in front of him, which shows that Huolinghua is not far from Xiao Yang. At the thought of the fire plume flower, Xiao Yang's mood was even more fiery. Even if he didn't hesitate, he moved his body, and the sky dew step at his feet was displayed in an instant. His body looked like the flowing wind, echoing the heaven and earth. In a twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang's body had disappeared between the heaven and earth. Looking at it from a distance, it was like a star, but it had appeared at the end of his line of sight. A moment later, Xiao Yang was standing in front of a huge city. The whole city looks like a creeping beast from a distance. It is heavily located here, which gives people an extremely powerful momentum and pressure. Is this Xiancheng? Indeed, it is worthy of being a city under the rule of Tianjianmen. Obviously, such prosperity is not comparable to ordinary cities. Looking at the crowded crowd coming and going in front of him, Xiao Yang couldn't help a look of surprise in his eyes, and he was amazed. Immediately, Xiao Yang's heart moved, and his black robe immediately shrouded his whole body and followed the flow of people. After a long time, Xiao Yang entered the city. Compared with the tip of the iceberg outside the city, the prosperity of the city can be called amazing. In addition to the full heads, the eye is an endless huge building complex. The number of various chambers of commerce can't be counted. Being here is like really entering the sea of people. After several twists and turns, Xiao Yang finally found a residence in a relatively remote place in the city. Of course, the so-called remote place, but now in the city, Xiao Yang also paid a lot of price for living. Just one residence made Xiao Yang pay 3 second-order pills. When thinking about the shop owner's appearance of a lion with a big mouth and a wild face, Xiao Yang couldn't help feeling a burst of heartache. He only got 3 second-order pills elsewhere, but it was enough to exchange a lot of spirit coins. If he didn't want to cause trouble, Xiao Yang wouldn't be willing to do that. Helpless to withdraw his mind, Xiao Yang quickly left the inn and wandered around the city. Although he has come to Xiancheng, he needs to know the venue of the auction. It's best to understand the layout of various forces in the city, which will certainly play a big role at the beginning of the auction. Only by knowing himself and the enemy can he be invincible in 100 battles. What's more, this is still the place where the 4 families are in command. If Xiao Yang is half careless, he may bring endless trouble to himself. Although Xiao Yang wanted to explore some news about the auction, he was disappointed that because of the increasingly crowded crowd in the city, Xiao Yang had not found the information he needed for a long time. However, he was crowded into a herbalist guild. There is indeed a lot of space in the herbalist guild. Because the force belongs to the alliance of herbalists, ordinary people dare not enter here, and most of those who can come here are herbalists. Therefore, Xiao Yang's sudden intrusion attracted many people's attention. This video will end here.